I never thought my life would crumble so quickly. For 2 years, Jessica and I built what I believed was a perfect relationship. We had moved in together, shared dreams, and I even bought an engagement ring for our upcoming vacation to Maui. All those plans, all that love and trust shattered in a single night at a dinner party I hosted in our own home. Before I share how my perfect relationship exploded right before my eyes, let me know where you're watching from, and hit subscribe if you've ever had your trust completely destroyed by someone you loved. I'm Dan, a 32-year-old software developer living in Seattle. Before meeting Jessica, I had been cautious about serious relationships. A painful breakup in my mid-20s had left me guarded, focusing more on my career than my love life. I worked hard to establish myself at a promising tech startup, eventually securing a senior position that allowed me to purchase my downtown apartment. I had created a comfortable life surrounded by good friends, particularly my best friend Alex and his wife Tara, who had been constants in my life since college. Growing up in a close-knit family from Portland, I valued loyalty and honesty above all else. My parents had been married for 35 years, setting a powerful example of commitment that shaped my approach to relationships. I wanted that same stability, that same deep connection that withstood life's challenges. When it came to dating, I never rushed things. My friends often joked that I had a 3-date rule before I would even consider someone a potential partner. Trust didn't come easily to me, but when I gave it completely. The day I met Jessica remains crystal clear in my memory. It was a rainy Tuesday morning at the coffee shop near my office. I was reviewing code for an upcoming project launch when she walked in shaking raindrops from her umbrella. With dark hair falling just past her shoulders and a confident stride, she commanded attention without trying. When the barista called out the wrong name for her order, she laughed it off with such genuine warmth that I couldn't help but smile. Jessica worked as a marketing executive for a competing tech company, though we discovered this only after striking up a conversation in line. She was smart, articulate, and had a way of making even mundane stories fascinating. There was something magnetic about her energy that drew me in immediately. Our first date happened that same week, a spontaneous dinner after running into each other again at the same coffee shop. Jessica was everything I wasn't, outgoing where I was reserved, adventurous where I played it safe. She told animated stories about backpacking through Southeast Asia and her dreams of starting her own marketing agency someday. Her passion was contagious, and I found myself opening up more than I had with anyone in years. What started as casual dating quickly deepened. Jessica and I seemed to complement each other perfectly. She pushed me outside my comfort zone, encouraging weekend hiking trips and impromptu road trips up the coast. I provided the stability and thoughtfulness she claimed to have been missing in previous relationships. Together, we balanced each other in ways that felt right. The first 6 months flew by in that blissful honeymoon phase. We established our favorite restaurants, developed inside jokes, and created rituals like Sunday morning brunches followed by walks along the waterfront. Every new discovery about Jessica only made me more certain we were building something special. Meeting her family during a weekend trip to Portland was a significant step. Her parents were warm and welcoming, immediately treating me like part of the family. Similarly, Jessica charmed my parents and siblings during Thanksgiving dinner, fitting seamlessly into my family dynamics. Our friend groups merged naturally, too. Jessica won over Alex and Tara with her generosity and humor. She organized surprise birthday parties, remembered everyone's preferences, and always went out of her way to make people feel special. It seemed like everyone who met her fell under her spell, just as I had. As we approached our 1-year anniversary, we took the leap and decided to move in together. It made sense financially, but more importantly, we both wanted to build a home together. Jessica moved into my apartment, bringing her colorful art pieces and plants that transformed my minimalist space into something warmer and more inviting. Living together brought new challenges, of course. We had different standards of cleanliness and disagreed about how to load the dishwasher properly. Jessica was a night owl, while I preferred early mornings. But we navigated these adjustments with patience and compromise, resolving conflicts through open communication rather than letting resentment build. Our second year together was marked by deeper conversations about our future. We discussed marriage, children, and career goals. Jessica expressed wanting 2 kids and a house in the suburbs eventually. I shared my hope to start a family while we were still young enough to enjoy it. These conversations felt natural, exciting, even as we mapped out a shared vision. There were occasional red flags I chose to ignore. Jessica could be secretive about her phone, quickly putting it away when I entered the room. She maintained friendships with exes that made me slightly uncomfortable, though she assured me they were purely platonic. Sometimes, her stories had inconsistencies that she would brush off when questioned. But these moments were rare enough that I convinced myself I was being paranoid or insecure. As our 2-year anniversary approached, I decided it was time to take the next step. I consulted with Tara about ring styles Jessica might like, saving aggressively for 3 months to afford something special. The jeweler helped me select a princess-cut diamond, set in rose gold, exactly matching a design Jessica had once pointed out in a magazine. With the ring hidden in my sock drawer, I planned an elaborate proposal for our upcoming vacation to Maui. I researched scenic lookout points coordinated with the hotel for champagne delivery, and even practiced what I would say. In my mind, everything was falling into place for our perfect future together. I never imagined that exactly 17 days before our scheduled departure, my entire world would collapse. The dinner party was my idea. Just a small gathering with our closest friends to celebrate the end of a successful work quarter. I spent all day Saturday preparing Jessica's favorite lasagna recipe, making fresh garlic bread, and setting up our apartment for guests. Jessica seemed unusually tense that morning, checking her phone frequently and disappearing into the bathroom for long stretches. I attributed it to work stress, offering to handle everything while she took time to relax. By 6 o'clock, our apartment smelled of garlic and basil. Candles were lit, wine was breathing, and soft music played in the background. I had created the perfect atmosphere for an intimate dinner with friends. Jessica emerged from the bedroom looking stunning in a blue dress I had given her for Christmas, though her smile seemed forced. Alex and Tara arrived first, bringing dessert and flowers. They were followed shortly by my coworker Kevin and his wife Steph. The 6 of us had become a tight social group over the past year, gathering regularly for game nights and weekend outings. Tonight felt no different as we settled into comfortable conversation over appetizers. Except something was different. Jessica poured herself a generous glass of wine before anyone had even taken their seats, draining half of it in one long sip. When I raised an eyebrow, she shrugged and said she needed to unwind. Throughout the appetizer course, she refilled her glass twice while barely touching her food. The conversation flowed naturally between topics of work, local politics, and an upcoming concert we were all planning to attend. Yet I noticed an unusual tension between Jessica and Alex. When he asked about her recent business trip to Chicago, she abruptly changed the subject. Later, when he mentioned running into her downtown on a day she had told me she was working from home, she shot him a warning glance I couldn't interpret. As I served the main course, I gently touched Jessica's shoulder, whispering to ask if everything was okay. She plastered on a bright smile, assuring me she was fine, just tired from a long week. But her behavior grew increasingly erratic as dinner progressed. She laughed too loudly at jokes, interrupted conversations with non sequiturs, and continued drinking at a pace that concerned me. Tara caught my eye across the table, her expression questioning. I gave a subtle shrug, equally confused by Jessica's behavior. Kevin and Steph exchanged uncomfortable glances when Jessica knocked over her water glass, reaching for more wine. The pleasant atmosphere I had worked to create was evaporating, replaced by a growing tension no one wanted to acknowledge. After dinner, as I cleared plates and prepared to serve dessert, Jessica announced she needed some air and headed for our small balcony. Alex offered to help me in the kitchen, but Jessica called out for him to join her instead. Something in her tone made my stomach tighten, but I smiled and assured him I had the cleanup under control. As I rinsed dishes at the sink, I could see Jessica and Alex through the sliding glass door. Their conversation appeared intense, with Jessica gesturing emphatically, while Alex maintained a stiff posture, glancing repeatedly toward the kitchen. I couldn't hear them until I moved to retrieve the dessert from the refrigerator, positioning me closer to the partially open balcony door. That's when I heard the words that would change everything. "I'm pregnant with Brian's baby," Jessica said, her voice slurred but clear enough. My hands froze on the refrigerator handle. Brian. The ex-boyfriend she occasionally mentioned, who she claimed was just a friend she met for coffee sometimes. The name struck me like a physical blow. "Jesus, Jessica," Alex responded, his voice hushed, but horrified. "Does Dan know?" "Of course not," she replied with a bitter laugh. "Dan thinks we're going to start trying after the engagement, after he proposes in Maui." My legs nearly gave out. How did she know about Maui? The proposal was supposed to be a surprise. And who the hell was this Brian really? "You need to tell him," Alex said firmly. "You can't keep something like this from him." Why not? Jessica's voice had taken on a defensive edge. "Dan will be a great father. He doesn't need to know it's not his. We've been together long enough that the timing works." The kitchen seemed to spin around me. I gripped the counter to steady myself, blood rushing in my ears so loudly I almost missed Alex's response. "That's insane, Jessica. It's completely unfair to Dan. You're talking about building your entire future on a lie." "It's not like that," she insisted. "I made a mistake, but Dan and I love each other. We can raise this baby together and be happy. What he doesn't know won't hurt him." I don't remember consciously deciding to move, but suddenly I was standing in the doorway to the balcony. Jessica's eyes widened when she saw me, her intoxicated brain slowly registering the look on my face. "Dan," she started, reaching for me. "How long have you been standing there?" "Long enough." I managed my voice surprisingly steady despite the earthquake happening inside me. "Excuse me, I need to check on our other guests." I walked back inside my body on autopilot. Kevin, Tara, and Steph were engaged in conversation, oblivious to the bomb that had just detonated in my life. With mechanical politeness, I served dessert and maintained minimal conversation, nodding and smiling at appropriate intervals while my mind screamed. Jessica returned to the table minutes later, noticeably more subdued. Alex followed, unable to meet my eyes. The remainder of the evening passed in a blur of forced pleasantries and awkward silences. I made excuses about an early meeting the next day, and our guests took the hint, gathering their belongings to leave earlier than planned. As they departed, Alex squeezed my shoulder, murmuring, "Call me tomorrow." Tara hugged me a beat longer than normal, her intuition clearly sensing something was wrong. Once the door closed behind them, my phone buzzed with a text from Alex. "We need to talk. I'm so sorry." The apartment fell into silence as Jessica and I faced each other across the living room. Her makeup had smudged beneath her eyes, and she swayed slightly where she stood. "What exactly did you hear?" she finally asked, her voice small. "Everything," I replied, surprised by my own calmness. "You're pregnant with Brian's baby, not mine, and you expect me to raise it without knowing the truth." "You don't understand," she protested, tears forming in her eyes. "It was a mistake. One time. It didn't mean anything." "One time," I repeated. "When? Exactly? And who the hell is Brian?" "Really, Jessica, your friend you get coffee with occasionally." Her face crumpled, the facade finally breaking. "It's complicated. Uncomplicated for me." I demanded, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "Tell me exactly what's been going on." The story spilled out between sobs and defensive justifications. Brian wasn't just an ex, but someone she'd been seeing on and off throughout our relationship. The pregnancy wasn't planned, but when it happened, she decided it was a sign they should be together, me and her raising this child in our perfect little life. "I love you," she insisted desperately. "Brian means nothing to me, I swear. We can make this work. You'll be such an amazing father." I stared at this woman I thought I knew, feeling like I was looking at a stranger. "Do you even hear yourself? You want me to raise another man's child while believing it's mine?" to build our marriage on a foundation of lies. It's not like that, she pleaded. The baby would be ours in every way that matters. Except for the truth, I said quietly. The truth matters to me, Jessica. As the argument escalated, more truths emerged. The Chicago business trip that never happened. The late-night work calls that were actually conversations with Brian, the friend who covered for her multiple times. Each revelation was another knife twist, another betrayal, layered upon the central deception. I need to leave, I finally said, moving toward our bedroom to pack a bag. Jessica followed, grabbing my arm. Where are you going? We need to talk this through. There's nothing to talk through, I replied, shaking off her grip. You cheated on me, repeatedly got pregnant by another man, and planned to trick me into raising his child. What exactly is left to discuss? I called Alex from the bedroom, asking if I could crash on their couch. Jessica alternated between crying and yelling as I packed essentials, begging me to stay and talk, then accusing me of abandoning her when she needed me most. The emotional whiplash was dizzying. When I walked out the door with my hastily packed bag, her final words followed me. If you leave now, don't bother coming back. It wasn't a threat that worried me anymore. It was a promise I intended to keep. That first night on Alex and Tara's couch was the longest of my life. Sleep evaded me completely as my mind replayed Jessica's words on an endless loop. Every memory of our relationship was now tainted, requiring re-examination through this new lens of deception. Had anything been real? How could I have been so blind? My phone buzzed constantly with messages from Jessica, ranging from tearful apologies to angry accusations. I silenced it around 3 a.m, staring at the ceiling until dawn broke through the blinds. Alex found me making coffee in their kitchen before he left for his morning run. His face was drawn with concern, and something else, a guilt that made my stomach clench. How long have you known? I asked, without preamble. He sank into a chair across from me, shoulders slumped. I didn't know about the pregnancy until last night, I swear. But I had suspicions about Brian for about a month. A month, the betrayal cut deep. And you didn't think to tell me I saw them having lunch downtown. It seemed friendly, but too intimate, you know. When I confronted her, she swore it was innocent and begged me not to say anything that would hurt you over what she called a misunderstanding. He rubbed his face tiredly. I told her she had 2 weeks to tell you herself, or I would. That deadline was coming up this weekend. I absorbed this information silently, neither absolving nor condemning him. In truth, would I have believed him without the evidence of my own ears? Jessica had been so convincing, so skilled at manipulating perceptions, that I might have dismissed his concerns as misinterpretation. After Alex left, I opened my laptop and did something I had never done before. I logged into Jessica's social media accounts. We knew each other's passwords, a transparency that had once felt like trust, but now seemed like a weapon I could use to uncover the truth. What I found shattered any remaining illusions. While there were no public photos with Brian, her private messages revealed an ongoing relationship spanning nearly our entire time together. Weekend work trips that coincided with his visits to Seattle, coffee dates scheduled during her lunch breaks. The evidence was overwhelming and meticulous, as if I were building a case file of my own heartbreak. Most devastating were messages from just weeks earlier, after she must have discovered the pregnancy, discussing how to handle the situation. Jessica had considered multiple options, including passing the child off as mine before settling on her deceptive plan. My phone rang with a call from Laura, Jessica's sister. I answered reluctantly, bracing for an onslaught of criticism, but her tone was gentler than expected. Jessica told me what happened. She began cautiously. Her version, anyway. And what version is that? I asked, my voice flat. That she made a mistake but loves you and wants to make it right. A pause. She's really upset, Dan. I know my sister can be impulsive, but she truly cares about you. Did she tell you she planned to trick me into believing her ex's baby was mine? The line went silent. I'll take that as a no. Listen, Laura eventually continued her tone, shifting to one of reluctant admission. Jessica has always been complicated. She wants what she wants, and sometimes doesn't consider the consequences. But I really thought she had changed with you. So did I. The simple truth hung between us. What are you going to do now? It was a question I hadn't fully processed myself. I don't know yet, but I won't be raising another man's child under false pretenses if that's what you're asking. After ending the call, I received a barrage of texts from Jessica, alternating between apologies and accusations. She claimed I was heartless for abandoning her during a vulnerable time, then minutes later begged forgiveness and promised change. The emotional manipulation was transparent now that I saw it clearly. Most disturbing was the realization that I wasn't the only one deceived. Based on messages, I found Jessica had told Brian I knew about their relationship and was fine with it, creating an elaborate fiction where we had an open arrangement. He had no idea she planned to pass his child off as mine. After 3 days of sleeping on Alex's couch and avoiding Jessica's increasingly frantic attempts to contact me, I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop downtown. Public location, limited time, clear boundaries. These were my only defenses against the emotional storm I anticipated. Jessica arrived, looking deliberately disheveled eyes, puffy from crying, wearing a sweater I had given her for her birthday. Every detail seemed calculated to trigger my protective instincts. Once it might have worked. Now I saw through the performance. "Thank you for meeting me," she began, voice quivering. "I've been so worried about you, about me, or about your plans falling apart." The words came out sharper than intended, but I couldn't summon remorse. Her eyes welled with tears. "That's not fair. I made a terrible mistake, but I love you, Dan. We can get through this together. There is no we anymore, Jessica. You made sure of that." "Everyone makes mistakes," she insisted. "If you truly love someone, you forgive them. This wasn't a mistake. It was a calculated deception that would have affected the rest of our lives." I kept my voice low, aware of nearby tables. "You were going to let me believe this child was mine forever." She reached across the table for my hand. I pulled back. "The baby could still be ours," she said softly. "You could adopt legally once we're married. No one would ever have to know." The suggestion landed like a slap. Are you listening to yourself? You're still trying to construct an elaborate lie rather than facing reality. The reality is that I'm pregnant, and scared, she countered, tears spilling over. And the man I thought loved me is abandoning me when I need him most. I took a deep breath, recognizing the manipulation tactic. "I'm not abandoning you, Jessica. I'm removing myself from a toxic situation you created through repeated deception." There's a difference. The conversation circled like this for nearly an hour. Jessica cycling through tears, pleas, guilt trips, and finally, when nothing worked, anger. "Fine," she hissed, gathering her things. "Walk away. But don't think I won't tell everyone how you left me pregnant and alone. Your precious reputation won't survive that." As she stormed out, I sat motionless, wondering how I had ever mistaken this person for the love of my life. The situation deteriorated further when Jessica refused to move out of our shared apartment. Since both our names were on the lease legally, there was little I could do to force the issue. I consulted an attorney who confirmed my limited options, recommending documentation of all interactions and patience until the lease ended in 4 months. With no immediate housing solution, I temporarily moved in with my parents in their suburban home outside Seattle. The commute to work was grueling, but the emotional support proved essential as the situation with Jessica spiraled. She began a campaign of harassment, enlisting friends to call and message me with pleas to do the right thing. Several mutual acquaintances took her side, without hearing mine, a painful reminder of how effectively she controlled narratives. Social media became a battleground, where she portrayed herself as the abandoned, pregnant girlfriend, receiving sympathy and support, while I maintained a dignified silence. When I returned to the apartment with a police escort to retrieve more of my belongings, I found several items of sentimental value damaged or missing. My collection of vinyl records had been deliberately scratched. A watch inherited from my grandfather had vanished. My books had been boxed and left in the rain on the balcony. Each act of destruction revealed more about who Jessica truly was, someone capable of calculated cruelty when she didn't get her way. The woman I loved had never existed except in my imagination. The emotional toll became physical. I lost weight, developed insomnia, and found it difficult to concentrate at work. Friends worried as I withdrew into myself, processing the magnitude of the betrayal. After 2 weeks of deteriorating health, I finally scheduled an appointment with a therapist, acknowledging I couldn't navigate this alone. Just when I thought the situation couldn't become more complicated, I received an unexpected email from a name I recognized immediately: Brian Miller. The subject line was simple: "We need to talk." My first instinct was to delete it unread. What could this man possibly say that would matter to me now? Yet curiosity won out, and I opened the message to find a straightforward request for a meeting, no details, just a phone number. After deliberating for days, I called. The voice that answered sounded as wary as I felt. "Thanks for calling," Brian said after awkward introductions. "I think we need to clear some things up. Face-to-face would be better." We agreed to meet at a brewery in a neighborhood neither of us frequented, neutral territory where we were unlikely to encounter shared acquaintances. I arrived early, claiming a corner table and ordering a beer I didn't really want, just something to occupy my hands. Brian was younger than I expected, maybe late 20s, with the build of someone who spent regular time at the gym. He approached cautiously, clearly recognizing me from photos he must have seen. "Dan, thanks for meeting me." His handshake was firm, his expression guarded. "This is weird, I know." "Weird doesn't begin to cover it," I replied. The conversation that followed revealed a parallel deception I hadn't fully comprehended. According to Brian, Jessica had maintained their relationship throughout our time together, telling him we had an open arrangement where I was aware of and comfortable with their involvement. When she discovered her pregnancy, she told Brian I was excited to co-parent, creating an elaborate fiction that kept us separated and unaware of her true intentions. When she told me she was pregnant, I was shocked, he explained, turning his glass slowly. But she immediately said not to worry, that you were thrilled and had always wanted kids, that the three of us would make it work somehow, and you believed that I couldn't keep the incredulity from my voice. He shrugged, embarrassed. It sounded crazy, but Jessica can be very convincing. And she had answers for everything. Texts she claimed were from you, explanations about why we couldn't all meet yet. He paused, meeting my eyes directly. "It wasn't until I saw your reaction when she posted about the pregnancy online that I realized something was very wrong. You didn't comment. Didn't like it, nothing. That's when I started digging. The picture that emerged was disturbing. Jessica had been playing us against each other for years, maintaining 2 relationships simultaneously through an intricate web of lies. Neither of us had the complete truth until now, sitting across from each other as reluctant allies in the aftermath of her deception. I want to be involved in my child's life," Brian stated firmly. "Whatever happens between you and Jessica, that's non-negotiable for me." I wouldn't expect anything less, I assured him. But Jessica and I are done. Completely. We parted with an unusual sense of solidarity. 2 men who had loved and been deceived by the same woman, now navigating the complicated aftermath together. We agreed to keep each other informed of any significant developments, a strange alliance born of shared betrayal. The confrontation with Jessica happened sooner than expected. Armed with information from both sides, Brian and I requested a meeting together. Jessica initially refused, then relented when Brian threatened legal action regarding the pregnancy. Seeing her face as we both arrived at the restaurant was almost worth the pain of the past weeks. The color drained from her cheeks as she realized her carefully constructed separate realities were collapsing. "What is this?" she demanded, voice shrill. "Why are you two talking?" "Because you've been lying to both of us," I replied calmly. "For years. And it stops now." The facade crumbled completely as we compared timelines and stories. Jessica's manipulation had been even more extensive than either of us realized, playing on Brian's insecurities about commitment and my fears of abandonment to keep us both attached while living essentially double lives. When confronted with irrefutable evidence of her deceptions, Jessica's response was telling. Rather than show remorse, she became defensive, then accusatory, claiming we had ganged up on her unfairly. When neither tactic worked, she dissolved into tears, playing the victim one final time. "I just wanted to be happy," she sobbed. "I loved you both in different ways." "Is that so wrong?" "The loving isn't wrong," I told her quietly. "The lying is." As Jessica's web of deception publicly unraveled, unexpected support arrived from surprising sources. Her parents contacted me with a sincere apology, admitting Jessica had struggled with honesty throughout her life. Former friends who had initially sided with her reached out after witnessing her changing stories. Even her sister Laura eventually called to apologize for her role in enabling Jessica's behavior. Through therapy, I began to recognize the patterns I had missed, the red flags I had ignored in my desire to believe in our perfect relationship. I learned to forgive myself for being deceived while establishing stronger boundaries for the future. The therapist helped me understand that trusting someone isn't a weakness, but blind trust without accountability creates vulnerability to manipulation. With the legal issues surrounding our shared lease resolved through mediation, I reclaimed the apartment after Jessica moved in with her parents. Walking through those rooms initially triggered painful memories, but gradually, I reclaimed the space, rearranging furniture, repainting walls, and creating an environment that reflected only my preferences and needs. The engagement ring returned to the jeweler for a partial refund, funded several months of therapy, instead an investment in healing rather than the future I had planned. It felt like poetic justice transforming what would have sealed my fate into a tool for liberation. 6 months after that fateful dinner party, my life has found a new rhythm. The apartment feels like my own again, decorated with new art that holds no memories of Jessica. I've reconnected with friends who stood by me and made peace with those who initially doubted my account, but later recognized the truth. Therapy has been transformative, helping me identify patterns of behavior I once mistook for love. I've learned to recognize the difference between genuine connection and manipulative charm, between honest communication and performative vulnerability. These lessons came at a tremendous cost, but their value is undeniable. Jessica gave birth last month to a healthy baby boy. Brian is actively involved as the father, while I maintain a respectful distance from their complicated situation. According to mutual friends, Jessica has started therapy of her own, perhaps finally confronting the behaviors that destroyed her relationships. I've begun dating again cautiously. My therapist encouraged me not to close myself off completely while respecting my need to proceed slowly. Trust doesn't come as easily now, but perhaps that's not entirely bad. Healthy skepticism balanced with openness seems a wiser approach than my previous all-or-nothing attitude. The pain hasn't disappeared entirely. Some days still bring anger or sadness when memories surface unexpectedly. But these moments no longer derail my life or define my identity. They're just echoes of a chapter that's closing, making space for whatever comes next. Perhaps the most important lesson from this experience is learning to trust my instincts. The red flags I ignored, the explanations I accepted despite my doubts, the uncomfortable feelings I dismissed, all contained wisdom I refused to acknowledge. Never again will I silence that inner voice for the comfort of a beautiful illusion. What I wanted was a perfect love story. What I needed was the truth, however painful. In losing the relationship I thought I wanted, I found something more valuable, a deeper understanding of myself, and the courage to demand honesty in all my relationships moving forward. If my story resonated with you, please share in the comments how you've handled betrayal or deception in your own relationships. Have you ever ignored red flags that later became obvious warning signs? What helped you heal and move forward? Remember to like and subscribe if this story touched you, and share it with someone who might need to hear that healing is possible even after the deepest betrayals. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, sometimes what feels like an ending is actually the beginning of a much better story.